carry out the execution. They're going to dress it up for you, make it look pretty. But once in a while, they get caught with their britches down. And that's what happened at Florida State Prison not too awful long ago. And that's the example that we've all got to carry back out to folks and tell them this is dirty business. The highest ranking folks in our country are pointing fingers and accusing other nations around the world of violating human rights.
Right.
It makes me chill to the bone every time I hear it. Because as soon as they point the finger at China for violating human rights, working people who are too young, something like that, they don't dare mention that, by the way, we're killing people all over our country, you know, and we kill people who killed people because that's how we want to teach our children that it should be done. That's what they should be saying, because that's what's the truth. That's the truth. I'm sick and disgusted with the death penalty. I've learned a lot about it in the last few years. I learned a lot more about it after I got out of the business. My faith, and this is the first time I've mentioned this, but I want to mention it tonight, has played a big part in this. I'm a Catholic man. We're in my church at Mass every Saturday or Sunday, whatever day my wife and I make it to Mass. We always pray for the people who are in prison, and especially those on death row. I'm a Knight of Columbus, a 4th degree, and when we pray at our meetings, that's another thing we do there. We pray for people. We pray for people who are in prison, and we pray for people who are on death row. But we have a lot of Catholics out there that still support the death penalty. That's going to be one of my projects, and I've already touched a little bit base that with Abe. So I'm going to go back to my own folks, my own church. I'm involved in a Cursillo effort as well. And at these places, I'm going to say, if we're genuine, bona fide, legitimate Christians, Catholics, and this is something we profess as a part of our religion, then we need to stand up and say that the death penalty is a rotten, dirty thing, and it makes our country look like we're in the Stone Ages. Thanks a lot for listening to me, folks.
What made you decide to get out of being a warden?
You know, I sometimes... Yeah, I was asked why I decided to retire, I guess. One of the reasons was I was 64 years old, I think. I know everybody thinks I'm about 30, but I'm really almost 69.
Wow.
I had my time in. I had purchased 4 years of my military time and added it on, so adding that to 23 years gave me 27 years, and I knew I was going to be asked to run a county jail for a short period of time after I got out. I'd already told them that I would not take the job permanently, that I would do it until they could do a national search. That turned out to be a real nice experience, though. So I had plenty of time. My wife and I had built our retirement home. My parents were in their late 80s. My dad, by the way, will turn 90 in January. And my mom's 89, so they needed my wife and I up in that area. I had to take my dad's driver's license away, and a lot of you have been through that sort of thing, taking them shopping, getting them back and forth to doctor's appointments. My dad and I are both treated at the VA, so we spent a lot of time down there, and that was the reason, to answer your question in terms of retiring. But I sort of kicked myself for it. After two years in retirement, 3 years in retirement, my wife said, you really need to go back and get a job in corrections. You can't stay off the phone with these people. You're on the internet with them half the day. They're coming by the house all the time. Everybody who has a problem in the Department of Corrections thinks you can fix it, and you don't even work there. Inmate families call you. So I actually thought about that. And then all of a sudden, right out of the blue, I got a call. I got a call from a law firm, and they told me that they were representing 5 inmates who had been raped by a correctional classification officer. They told me who the warden was of that particular prison, and they asked if I would consult with them. First they asked if I would consult, then they told me the warden's name, and I said, "You bet." And that case led to another one, and another one, and another one, and finally I had to go get a business license and start paying taxes on a little bit of money I make, and that's where I am now. I'm consulting, and I do a lot of pro bono work for inmate families. If they have an attorney who has picked up their case, I always charge attorneys, and they deserve it. Every penny I get from them. Any attorneys here, I'm sorry, but you always got to kick the attorneys. Did that answer your question, though? Real long answer, sorry about that. Yes, sir.
Yeah, how many executions did you witness?
I carried out 3 at Florida State Prison, and I participated in 5 in Huntsville, Texas. Yes, sir.
How do you find yourself accepted by other former wardens? Are you?
Well, I tell you, 2 years ago, I testified before the National Commission on Safety and Abuse in America's Prisons. This was one of the most professional commissions that has ever been put together. Past Attorney General Katzenbach was the co-chairman of this commission. They went to 4 different locations around the United States. It was incredibly well organized. This was actually the same day that I really started saying to myself, I need to be doing something about the death penalty. But in that in that presentation, I said that in the Florida Department of Corrections, and this is going to lead to another thing I'll add if you don't mind. In the Florida Department of Corrections, I said it's broken up into 3 groups. I said there are about 15% of the entire workforce of some 31,000 employees are the most incredible folks you'd ever want to meet in your life. Professional, dedicated, hardworking, honest, not afraid, ready to get in there and do what it takes. Not afraid of the goon squads, not afraid of anybody. They'll do what it takes, 15%. And that's a real good estimate based on the number of places I've worked. 80%, they go with whichever way is the safest. They roll their eyes, see nothing, they hear nothing, and they do nothing. And then there's 5% that are the serpents of this earth. These are your goon squads. These are your very evil people. These are your criminals who are wearing law enforcement uniforms and pretending to be law enforcement officers. I had the pleasure of firing several hundred of them in my time. But at that same meeting, I stood there and took a liability risk, I was told. There were several lawyers that came up to me that day, and one of them even said, if you need representation, you might want to come to me, because I accused the Secretary of the Florida Department of Corrections of being a gangster.
No.
His name was James V. Crosby, Jr. Jimmy Crosby. Known him for 25, 30 years now. And I told him that some of the horrible things he was doing. I told him that he allowed Frank Valdez to be murdered at Florida State Prison. Jimmy followed me as the warden at Florida State Prison. I told James Crosby that a guy named Tim Thornton, who was a lieutenant there, was leading a goon squad. I had him under investigation. I said, I'm an inch away from putting him in jail. Of course, I knew that Tim Thornton was a good buddy of Jimmy Crosby's. I knew they sat on the tailgate and drank liquor together and shot deer on duty time. I knew a lot about Jimmy Crosby, and I said it that day at that commission.